Introduced today, right? The topic. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So hi, thank you everyone for joining us again on day 3 of CPAC Goes Back to School. And before we get started with today's content, I just want to take a moment to tell everyone who we are and what we do. So under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, every state is required to have a Parent Training Information Center. And for the state of Connecticut, that's the purpose of CPAC. So we are here to assist you and to provide you with information to navigate, and at this particular time, to navigate back to school. We are Facebook Live. We are also going to have this video uploaded on YouTube after the fact. So just keep that in mind. If you have questions and you're sharing any personal information, just be aware this is a public venue. And I am Lynn Rule. I'm a parent consultant with CPAC. I have 2 children who are still in the public school system, one who is receiving services. And at this point, I'd like to introduce my co-hosts for the day, Lisa Opert and Leona Adamczyk. Lisa, Leona, would you like to introduce yourselves? Lisa, you can start.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name's Lisa Opert. I'm a mom of 4. I'm a parent consultant with CPAC and a former teacher. So 2 of my children have IEPs currently, and we're gearing up for back to school.
Great. Leona?
So my name is Leona Adamczyk. I'm also a parent consultant. I have 3 boys, and they're a little bit older, and they're 2 on IEPs and 1 on a 504. So like everybody, we're gearing up for school and the changes, and have questions that are changing every day. And so we're right here with you. And I think it's great topics that Lisa's going to be talking to us about today.
Terrific. Thank you. So I'm going to bring up our presentation for today. It really is not an awful lot of slides. We just have a couple, but we're going to be talking about cohorting. This is the new buzzword. So I think we all have a new dictionary now with a lot of new words and phrases that we've learned over the course of the last 6 months. So today we're going to be talking about cohorting, and we are fortunate that Lisa, as not only a parent consultant, but is a former teacher. So this is a great opportunity for us to be able to get her input on what this all means in the land of school time. Lisa, do you want to talk about what this actually all means and how we're going to relate this as we all navigate going back to school?
Yeah, so cohorting is one of those words that we've been hearing literally every day. Anytime you see any back to school coverage, we're talking about cohorting students here, cohorting there. And the reality is it's not a new concept, but it's a concept that's really being put into practice with COVID returns. So really the definition of it emphasize grouping students by the same class or group of students and teacher into a cohort. So each team functions independently as much as possible. Literally, it's just saying we're going to take the same children, the same adults, teachers, and cohort them, put them together to minimize exposure to other people. So what they're doing is they're doing it at all different levels. It looks different at each different level at the elementary school and then secondary levels, which we can talk more about. But it was released by the CDC, and it was told that this is going to be a huge piece of returning back to school. And it's also made it so that if there is a case that shows up in a classroom, that classroom will be quarantined or sent home from school to do remote learning, as opposed to the entire school because of one possible exposure or things like that. So it has a lot of great ideas to it. Consider this methodology by grade levels. Placing students in cohorts is strongly encouraged for grades K through 8 and encouraged where feasible for grades 9 to 12. And it's definitely much harder to do at high school level. And there's a couple of different times that it's specifically more difficult. So I want to just confirm that it is literally just keeping the same group of people together throughout the day. It doesn't have to be much more complicated thought process than that. It's a really very simple concept, but it's just figuring out how to do that and still have kids be able to participate in all different aspects of their education. So if I can talk a little bit about what it's going to look like at the elementary school, because it's a much easier place to be cohorting. really our children are fairly cohorted in regular education times. They're in their elementary classroom. As they get older, they may switch teachers for math based on levels. But for the most part, our kids have cohorted for a long time within the classroom. What elementary school cohorting is going to look like is that those kids are going to be together in the classroom all day, including lunch, including specials, including recess times. And children are not going to be intermingling with other classes. So if there's 3 fourth grades, those fourth grades are going to stay with their own class. So they're even at recess. Good way I've heard about it described at recess is if there is 3 classes and there's 3 different spots, maybe they have a blacktop, maybe they have a playground, and maybe they have a field. So each class will have one of those spots for recess to make it so that each class is still able to participate in recess in more outside time, but not intermingling between the groups. So they're still minimizing while still being able to be kids and do those physical activities that kids really need, that movement breaks. Yeah, and then at lunch, they're saying that many elementary schools are going to be having their lunch in their classrooms. There have been a couple of concerns about allergies that was brought up with that. And what you could do is you can again, this open communication with schools is going to be the biggest thing. So if your child has a 504 for a food allergy or something similar, please reach out to your classroom teacher, the principal, your caseworker, whoever it is that you think will be beneficial, and reach out and say, how are we going to keep my child the most safe in a cohorting lunch period? Some schools are addressing it by having outside lunch, an outside snack time. Others are saying we're going to make sure that this is a completely peanut-free classroom or similar allergies. So they're trying really, it's a creative time in elementary school. For my children, I have kids going into kindergarten, 3rd and 5th grade. And they have their schools have purchased them those little bleacher seats so that they can go outside. They see where they're sitting. They know where they're going to be far enough apart because their seats are going to be kind of show where to put. So they're doing really great jobs at elementary school level. Cohorting.
If I could just interject for one quick second, Lisa. So when we talk about I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the specialists and some of the support services coming into a classroom. So we're hearing that these folks will be coming into the classroom rather than students getting pulled out. They will be coming in. Is that correct?
Yes. So there are many districts. Again, all districts are doing things their way. There's been guidance just released, but nothing saying this is how it's going to be done. So many of the families that we've spoken to about a vast variety of differences in their cohorting, but most are having specialist teachers. So music, art, even gym teachers come to the classrooms so that kids aren't moving through the halls as often. And those teachers have a protocol for coming from one classroom to another. In our district, the protocols were just released yesterday for specialist teachers, that when they move from one class, they're going to be switching masks completely. They have washing stations outside of each classroom. So before the specialist teachers come into the classroom, they're already taking precautions to minimize exposure, the travel from one classroom to another. Some teachers are talking about kind of almost like lab coats to kind of cover up so that they're not carrying anything on clothes. So I think people are trying to figure out the best way for it to be happening. But I think everything's going to be happening in classrooms. A lot of gym teachers are going to be doing lots of outside time, weather permitting. What we're going to do on rainy days, I'm not really sure, but I'm sure there's plans in place.
One of the things we talked about here was having gym teachers navigate or facilitate recess. So that way they could commingle that recess time with gym so that we're not completely losing out on that physical exercise, which is really important. And especially if kids are sitting in their seat all day. So we're used to that, getting up and moving around and being able to be a little bit, more mobile during the day. So this still gives them that opportunity.
I think that's great. I think it's also, you know, important for those kids who in their IEPs or 504s have movement breaks. So making sure that these kids are still able to be moving throughout the day and having gym teachers be able to do that would be great.
Our district purchased, and I haven't seen it yet, but our district purchased to help with some of the gym to engage remote learners, a program that would, and I haven't seen it yet, but it's to kind of bring gym into the home and in school for some of those remote, for the older kids for the remote learning.
Yep.
But I do see a question in Facebook, or I'm sorry, in our chat, and it said, contained class, how are they going to do when they're doing the, like, I think it's from when special education students are going to receive their services, possibly in the resource room and coming back. There's protocols put in place for that as well. A lot of the special education classrooms I've seen have lots of the plexiglass up so that children are kind of really being divided into small spaces. There's hand washing protocols. We've been asked to send in extra masks so that we can change as they're moving throughout the classroom or the hallways. So I think that you can reach out and say, hey, I just wanted to see how are kids going to be moving throughout the classroom? When my son is going to be receiving his X amount of hours in resource center, how is going to move safely throughout the school? How many kids will be in the resource room at the same time? Those are all important questions.
And two, when we talk about just in general, as they were talking about gym, a lot of schools are doing away with changing because usually it starts around 5th grade when they start changing. So some of the changes have been made that they don't need to change because the locker rooms will be closed. They just ask on those days that you make sure you wear appropriate footwear.
Yeah.
But they're relaxing on some of those rules to make sure that, again, less exposure.
Yeah, really just looking and seeing how can we lessen or minimize exposure to people outside of your little bubble, your cohort. And people are referring to cohorts also as pods. But yeah, trying to do small changes can make a big impact on the number of people that you're being exposed to all throughout the day.
So how do you think we would work this in a middle school environment?
Middle school and high schools have quite the job on their hands, in my opinion. I think all schools actually have quite the job this year. But I think in particular, high schools and middle schools, just because there's such a larger number of students. When you think back to high school, walking through hallways, they were just so jam-packed. So some schools are doing block schedules. So they're doing longer classes, but fewer classes per day. So if they had an 8-block class last year, so 8 different classes throughout the day, maybe this year they're only doing 4, but they're double classes. So they have the same number of kids, but they're staying in that room for a longer period of time. Some of them are switching schedules, so there aren't as many students within the hallways. There's a lot of schools are doing away with lockers completely, so that kids aren't having access to it. So having no reason to randomly go in the hall and meet up with somebody else and, hey, high five, to try to minimize. And then some of them are also doing it where students are staying in the classroom as much as possible and the teachers are doing the changing. So that's not going to necessarily be feasible for everything, but when it can, if the math teacher and the math teacher and reading teacher are maybe the same, maybe we're just switching the teachers as opposed to having the kids leave the classrooms at all. And another big concern I had at the high school that I had to really look up a lot of information was about how are they going to feed kids? I think that's a big worry. I think a lot of schools are doing lunch in classrooms, or they're opening up, underused spaces. So if they normally have 300 kids in a cafeteria, which sounds insane, but when you really think about it, if there's 2,000 kids in a school, there's going to be that many kids at recess per period, or at lunch. So I think they're using courtyards. Some of them are planning courtyards with
We're putting a tent over our senior patio to extend that area. I know in our district, we're using, like you said, underutilized places, but we are using like our multi-purpose room to, auditorium to expand it out. So I think schools are looking at how can we use other spaces for this and social distance. Yeah. I wanted to say too, like one of the things I know that's happening in our district and a few others is if they went to the block scheduling and if a child has study hall first or third on that day, that 3-block schedule, if they had it the first or third period of their day, if with parents' permission, if they're want to go home, they can. So you can either come in late or leave early if you have a study hall during that time. Again, just minimizing how many kids are in the school.
Yeah, well,
for some of these larger schools too, looking at a hybrid model. So cohorting just means getting the same group of kids together all the time. Mm-hmm. So if you're just taking, say, alphabetically, the last half of the alphabet, you're now going to have only half of those students in the building at one time. And so it's very important that the kids show up on the days they're supposed to. So going back to the conversation that we had on day one, understanding what the models are that are in place for your district so that you know when your children are supposed to be there, what day they're supposed to be in class, what classes they are supposed to be at any one time. But keeping them all together, certainly minimizing the exposure to one another.
So we do have a question from Facebook. Mm-hmm. Lisa, I'll let you answer it. It says, is there anyone that I can call to discuss specific issues specific to my children in homebound services? And of course, the answer is Lisa.
Oh, sorry. We just had a friend at our house.
No, that's okay.
No, power's very
okay.
iffy, I guess. Sorry.
So the answer is that you can call us at CPAC and we will put the information in there and we'll be happy to work with you on an individual basis to discuss any concerns you may have. So on Facebook and in the chat today, we will, at the end of the call, put the information in there for you to reach out to us.
Excellent. Yeah, we're so happy to answer questions and work through. Sometimes it's just nice to be able to talk through and say, hey, these are our options. And really look at it. So talking to another mom who gets it is always helpful. So we're there to help alleviate stress as much as we can and talk through possibilities.
So has anyone been informed so far with respect to the classroom schedule that they may have, or if you have any questions regarding how your classroom, what you think your classroom is going to look like and some of the concerns that you might have? We really wanted this to be an opportunity for all of you to share some questions and concerns that you had and maybe helping you to understand perhaps what models are in place for your respective districts. Does anyone have anything that they want to ask about or share, whether it be about cohorting or a hybrid model or opting into remote learning? I know that on a daily basis, we're seeing that things are changing within school districts, and many districts have chosen to begin as all remote and then move into a hybrid. Some have made changes even today, and we have school starting in some places, I think next week, and some that are going the week after. Some have asked for a pushback even to the 15th of September. So what are you experiencing with your respective districts? Does anyone want to unmute themselves and share any comments, concerns, or questions? And I think we lost Lisa.
Yeah, she was having a problem. She'll hop back in. Yeah, if anybody wants to share what you have going on, I will say that, as we know, I've shared a couple of times, we are going in person at this time with 2 weeks to go. We start on September 8th. That is our goal. But when we look at the numbers under how many people are opting into remote learning, the percentage of the kids in the school, is at the high school has the highest percentage at 70% of the kids being in person, but one of our elementary schools only has 34% returning. So when you think about, we're a small district, so you think about returning to school with those less percentages, everybody's like, how are you doing it? We're not a large district, and when you take out that number, like our high school will have like just over 700 kids in it. But when you use the block scheduling, it will be even less. So that's how we're doing it, but that's why. Like, that's how we're able to accomplish it. In some cases, our face-to-face full day will look like other districts hybrid.
Right.
So I think that's just really important to kind of point out as we do these things. Everybody's district is different. Whether even if you're going to your magnet schools, what does that look like there? Like, you have to look at the individual plans.
So our district is we have hybrid or opting into remote learning. And that's just because we have a very large district. We have over 17,000 students, 21 schools. So it's kind of difficult to maintain social distance when you have that many people in such a small space. And so my son is going back to a hybrid model. And the way we have it set up here is every other day. So that actually makes it a little challenging when we're trying to plan. What are we going to do? When are we going to be here? What day is this? Oh, are you in today? Are you doing class from home today? But I think that as a student, he's most excited to be able to go back and see other people besides the people that have been in this house with him for the last 6 months. And he's happy to kind of get back into something that looks like his typical schedule. So,
does anybody else want to share their district, or is there any questions? Oh, wait, there is.
Oh, Maggie.
Yep. Can you read it, Lisa?
Maggie said, wondering if districts going back next week have more details. We begin the 8th and we have basic knowledge of systemic protocols, but no detailed protocols being used at the elementary level. Waiting, teachers and case managers not available until tomorrow when staff returns. Completely understand this, but communication is really stalled.
Well,
so that's kind of unfortunately, that's the phrase of the day, is that it has kind of all stalled. I think people are kind of waiting to determine, also waiting to see how many kids are going to be returning back in person. I know for us, and I believe most of you guys too, there was a survey you had to fill out whether you were going to return or if you were opting into remote. So taking a look at those numbers, it doesn't make any of us feel any better because that day on the calendar to return to school is looming larger and larger. And so I would say that if you have questions, specific questions about your respective district, and you have not heard anything, if the staff returns tomorrow, I think they said, then they should probably, I would say, reach out the day after tomorrow. Give them tomorrow, let them get in and kind of get their feet wet and see if there's any additional information forthcoming. That would be my input. Lisa, Leona, what would you like to?
Well, I was laughing with the stalled because I want Maggie to know we weren't laughing at the statement, but before the call started, we, Lisa, Lynn, and myself, literally just had this conversation about not having any idea of how there's districts that are going back to school next week and they don't, like on Monday, and they don't know how to sign in and stuff yet. So you're not alone, although that's not a good answer. But that's kind of what made us, kind of giggle a little, because we just had this conversation. We're all in the same shoes. How can we make it happen? So communication, just reaching out to them and say, we know you're just coming back, but I want to make sure the first day goes smooth, because the first day is the first day, regardless if you're home or you're in person. It still needs to feel like the first day of school. You still need to have access to it. So we want to make sure that it's happening.
I think prepping for back to school this year looks a little bit different than what it's done in years past, where we would think about going to Staples and picking out the pretty pencil cases for our little guys and, the binders or notebooks that have specific characters on the front of them. And so I think that if nothing else, this makes it happening this year so much more important. Make sure that they have things that they like, that they're happy. It's something that's going to put a smile on their face, because the adults really are going to be just as nervous and just as apprehensive as any of the students and any of the parents as these kids are going back and trying to navigate this. So having all of their own, the big thing was having your own items. So I'm not sharing with Leona, I'm not sharing with Lisa. My stuff is my stuff. This is when we kind of become a little selfish and we're not sharing our things anymore. So making sure that people also have enough supplies. I think in some of these communities that perhaps really rely on parents bringing in, you know, boxes of pencils for the whole class to share, it's really going to be important to reach out to those teachers and say, hey, can you give me a list of things that I can contribute to your classroom so that you can have supplies on hand for other students who might be looking for that.
I just want to add from Kio's comment in Facebook, because on the chat for those who can't see it. What she had said is just to at least reach out and email letting the district know that you are there. And I just like the way that she put it, because it's just so not confrontational, right? It just says, I'm here when you're ready, even though really we're anxious for it to happen. So thank you, Kio, because it does just put a really positive spin on being to reach out.
Well, let's face it, I mean, these buildings have been shuttered since March. And so we're reopening our doors for the first time since March. And it sounds crazy to think that the last time that we went off to school, everyone was wearing a coat and a hat. And, you know, now they're coming back in with shorts and t-shirts and not really quite sure exactly where they're heading to. So
it's been 6 months. It's going to be almost 6 months to the day.
6 months. Yep.
So, I mean, it was March 13th when most schools last day. Yep. And, you know, they're going back for the most part on September 8th. So it's been 6 months of them not being in school. And I think regardless of whether they are in special education or not, there's going to be transition concerns. Mm-hmm. The learning model is very different for the fall and returning to school than it was in the spring. So even those who are opting into remote learning should not look like it looked like in March. Because this isn't just learning opportunities, but we're actually looking to learn and go to develop and learn the curriculum for this year. So there's a lot that everybody has going through their heads. Administrators do not have an easy job. I thought the other day as I was watching our superintendent speak, and I'd almost said to him, he's so great at choosing snow days when we have them and when we don't, but we are literally like one of the only districts that doesn't have snow days. And sometimes I think the state should say every town but. He's so great at it. He does a great job at calling them. But I wanted to say to him, don't you wish that you could just call a snow day right now instead of having to make these decisions, which are just huge, huge. Board of Ed, administrators, everybody. And of course, we're all trickling down. And now it's time to get the kids and the teachers on board and going in. And it's not easy. So we're going to take it day by day.
I think we also have to kind of remember that as parents, we can really set the tone to the start of the school year. So if you have those back to school traditions, make sure you're doing them, even if they look a little bit different. If you haven't any, maybe create some this year to make it even more exciting. We do my kids love holiday meals, as silly as it sounds, but they like eating off fancy plates and stuff. And really it's just our regular plates, not paper plates. But so the night before we do a big fancy meal as our last meal of summer. And they look forward to it. Everybody gets to choose something to eat. So it's always a wild looking, it really goes together, but it's all their favorite things that get offered. So it's things that we would be doing anyway. We're not spending any extra money. We're just kind of presenting it differently.
So it's such a great point. So my kids are older, your kids are younger. Between us, we cover the entire spectrum, right?
Yes.
Between the three of us, we cover even more. But I have a senior this year, and I will guarantee you, I make cookies on the first day of school when they get off that bus. And even though he's a senior, I know that they're going to be looking for the cookies. So what a great point it is. And one year I almost forgot and I totally freaked out. And sure enough, I missed the first kid getting off the bus. They had different times that year. And he wasn't happy. That's why I know my senior will be upset if the cookies aren't there. Yeah. So I only do it on the first day of school. So what a great point that is, though. You know, however you're going to, if you have traditions, to keep them up, and if you don't have any, you know, and maybe you want to start something, it's still great to make it feel special. So a couple more comments just from Keo, because not everybody can see the chat all the time, and she has great points. She said, make sure that you notify the school's child's teacher, which is your preferred mode of communication. And this is so important with what we're going into. If you don't receive written word very well and they're emailing you on a regular basis, like tell them that you would prefer a phone call, and could you schedule like one a week or something like that. If it's reversed, you prefer email, express it. Do not assume that they know, and also be mindful that they may not accept texts. Very true. But if you don't ask or tell them your preference, then they will choose it for you. And she also put it in Spanish in the chat for everyone to hear the same thing. So thank you so much, Keo.
I also think it's important too, especially for the little people, for them to understand that, like Leona said, it's almost 6 months to the day since they went back to school. They are not going back into Mrs. Opert's classroom where they were the last time. And I think some kids may have that thought because they never had that last day of school experience. So there was never any closure. So chances are pretty good that they may have had Mrs. Opert at, you know, for the last day of school, but now they're going into Mrs. Jones's class. And so they're going to really have a lot of questions about that, especially if they also may have left their pencil case in their old classroom, or some personal item.
I was just going to say lockers. They didn't clean out their lockers, and now
can you imagine the smells?
And I mean, most districts cleaned out the lockers. Yes. And the pickup day, but just the process of that, they didn't do that. They didn't have the closure. They might not even realize that you brought it home and that the gym clothes are washed and in their dresser drawer, because they didn't put two and two together that, oh wait, this was what was in my locker, in their gym locker or whatever. So it's definitely the transition is going to be difficult.
Well, I think in a regular school year, like, you know, when I was still teaching, those first 2 weeks of school, my class from last year, there was always at least one kid per day that would accidentally come to my classroom as opposed to the classroom. And, you know, we welcomed him with a big old hug, but
not this year.
Yeah.
And some
no hug.
Right. And some struggles that might occur is the schools that have one way hallways. And so to get to point A to point B, you might, you know, you could be going from the same side of the school, but one floor down, and have to go all the way to the other side of the school to go down. You know, I see some districts like mine, the kids going, oh my goodness, but guys, you have a small school. In other schools, like I, you know, where I went to school, it was bigger, and I could see that being definitely, you know, what's that time lapse going to be? How long does it take? So just a lot of changes. And I think when the kids come home in the first couple of days, is having a discussion about what that looks like. What is, you know, what was it? What are they talking about? We don't want to jump on everything the first day, you know, understanding that we're working on the cohorting and what it's going to look like. And we should pay attention to what their concerns are the first day and talk to them about it. But we might want to give the school an opportunity to work on it before we call it out, if it's not a safety issue, of course. So just understand it's a learning process for all of us. Got a little bit off topic, Lisa, we're sorry.
It's great. I think it's things that everybody has on the top of their heads anyway. They want to talk about and see. And
so we'll throw it out there if anybody has any remaining questions. We do have our phone number and email in both chat on Facebook and in the Zoom chat.
Lisa, did you have anything else to add about our topic for today, or any thoughts that you want to leave everyone with before we sign off?
Just remember, cohort, they're not trying to they're just trying to have everybody as safe as possible. They're trying to minimize exposure to many people. It'll look different, but it will start to feel a little bit more normal. everything just takes time. Every new normal takes new time. So as much as I hate the word new normal, but
right.
that is what it is at this point. So thank you so much for coming out, everybody. Thank you.
So thank you all for joining us for day 3 of CPAC Goes Back to School. And our topic for tomorrow was originally considered to be the socialization piece, and we're going to talk about some extracurricular activities and sports. But as of right now, everything still is a big question mark. So we don't really know how we can address that topic. So what we would really like to do is to be able to answer questions and concerns that you have and issues that you might want to discuss if there's more information that you are looking for on a particular topic. So we would encourage you to shoot an email to us, and we put our email address in the chat earlier, and I know it's on Facebook Live also. And we will come back tomorrow. We will kind of wrap up our conversation for this week, maybe talk a little bit about some of the changes that we've seen in some of the districts across the state. And we hope that you'll be back here again tomorrow at 3 o'clock.
We do have a Facebook question that popped
sorry.
up. No, I know, it's okay. It just came in. There's a delay sometimes between the two. So I'm going to ask it, and I think that it kind of goes with cohorting, and then we can follow up on it tomorrow. So it's kind of like a two-parter. We also have a hybrid model for 2 months. So this is a district who's starting in hybrid, and then they probably have a cutoff date. Those students who have high needs can opt for full in-person. In order to expedite evaluations, our district will contract an outside group to conduct some of the evaluations, which were put on hold in March. Have you seen this done before? Can we request our own private services to provide certain evaluations in lieu of this? Or if my child is home, how do we complete the evaluations? So I think that we should maybe take the question, and tomorrow we can definitely talk about evaluations, just to be respectful of everybody's time. So if you want to talk about maybe the cohorting piece, which is it higher needs us being in school full time, and talk about that a little bit. And then to whoever's question that was, we can either talk to you privately on the side, on our, if you call into CPAC, we can talk about evaluations, but we'll definitely touch upon evaluations tomorrow as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest, we were talking about cohorting with, I'm sorry, I'm trying to read what the question was. What was the piece that
was about? So they talked about doing evaluations, but what I want to talk about in a general question is children with special, with higher needs and special education being able to be there on a full-time, even in a hybrid model.
Well, this is happening differently across districts again. So if you are a person that consider your child to be a high needs child and your principal has not reached out to you regarding how many days of the week they will be at school, I suggest doing that. The guidance released, I remember reading something about it was at the principal's discretion, something like that. Now, I don't necessarily think it's going to be at one person's discretion, but I would reach out. Cohorting is a little bit more complicated with that unless they're in a self-contained classroom. So if they're doing in a hybrid classroom and they're in the general education classroom, they're now being exposed to both groups of hybrid class. So that puts the risk up a little bit for families. And you have to decide what your own comfort levels are. We're all very particular about what's right for our family, and whatever you choose is perfect for your family. But I would definitely reach out and see how that's going to be happening. A lot of those, again, that I've heard about are specifically students that are in classrooms for a particular diagnosis or a particular level of need. So I would reach out and see how your district is doing that.
And lastly, I'm just going to follow up from a Facebook question, but it was answered already by CPAC, so I'm just going to read both before we kind of close it up for today. So it says, I know that districts wants parents to check temperatures before school. If a child is on a bus is a bus rider, are temperatures being checked when the child gets on the bus or when they get to school? And does anyone know if this is something being addressed in any district? So our response is the CDC does not currently recommend universal symptom screenings. Screenings all students grades K through 12 be conducted by schools. Parents or caregivers should be strongly encouraged to monitor their children for signs of infectious illness every day. Students who are sick should not attend school in person. So if
our
you're
district sent home kind of a checklist for us to, like a self-monitoring checklist, and it just said a list of symptoms, yes and no. And if you checked yes for any of those, they're requesting that kids stay home. So it's really kind of be like community. Really, if your kid doesn't feel good that day, we're going to try to keep them home. And that's what the schools are asking.
And so I'm gonna read from Laura as well, because Laura is one of our parent consultants. Each district has their own policy on how students will be monitored for the bus and in school. I encourage you to reach out to your district and bus company. So I think that's really important. The other thing too is to think about if your district, everybody has the opting in to virtual remote learning. So take a look at how it's happening in your district. I know a lot of questions that are coming in are, if my child's sick, can they actually sign on to? Because we don't know what's wrong with them right now and we don't want to expose them. Can they sign into remote learning? And if you check with their districts, some are saying yes. So see what that looks like. Okay. And again, because everyone's doing it differently, it might not work in every district, but in some districts, we're getting answers of yes, and again, grades and everything included. So thank you everybody so much for joining us and contributing to an engaging conversation. And we really look forward tomorrow. We'll answer the question about evaluations a little bit further, as well as be available for any other questions that you might have. So bring them on our final day of CPAC Goes Back to School. So see you all tomorrow.
Thanks. Bye everyone.
Gracias a todos. Están terminando la llamada ahora.